Should genetically modified foods be labeled in the US? 64 other countries around the world already mandate labels on GM foods, including countries such as the European Union, Russia, China, Japan, and Australia.
Despite this fact, it's still heavily debated in the US. In 2013 alone, food and biotechnical corporations such as Monsanto spent $23 million to oppose legislation that would require labeling on all foods containing GMOs. Last year's spending nearly tripled as public awareness of this issue has grown.
Biotech corporations are strongly opposed to labeling their products because they fear they will lose consumers, which will result in a loss of profits. They argue the average consumer is not educated enough to make a rational decision in buying food if they were provided the choice. We, the consumers, may see a GMO label and for whatever personal reason, rational or not, refuse to buy their food.
The two most important considerations when attempting to determine if labeling is a necessity are the safety of the consumer and the individual's right to know what they are putting into their bodies. It is estimated that nearly 75% of processed foods in supermarkets contain genetically engineered ingredients. This is not surprising, as over 90% of US-grown corn, soy, and cotton is genetically engineered. So, are GMOs a real threat? Or has the media caused hysteria amongst consumers?
Scientists are split on this issue. Many are skeptical and argue that since GMOs are a relatively new technology, it is impossible to know if there are any long-term effects. However, scientist Anna Bakshi explains that potential long-term risks in GMOs may include allergic substances being contaminated in the crops due to the addition of new genes. Additionally, scientists worry that these crops contain lower levels of phytoestrogens, which are crucial in heart disease and cancer prevention. The most serious worry, however, is that the potential creation of antibiotic-resistant bacteria could provide a serious safety issue nationwide.
Another effect to consider is the issue of herbicides. Crops are genetically engineered to be resistant to herbicides, which are chemicals designed to kill weeds growing on and next to the crops. While most farming techniques include the use of herbicides, the amount of herbicides used on GMO crops is triple the usual amount. Scientists are concerned that plants that have been sprayed with such chemicals could be toxic to the consumer.
It is extremely important to note that no studies have ever definitively found GMOs to be unsafe to human health. However, our research has found that these testing protocols to ensure the safety of GMOs are outdated and pale in comparison to the more rigorous protocols of some European countries. Jose L. Domingo, professor and director of the Laboratory of Toxicology and Environmental Health at the University of Virginia School of Medicine, states that, to date, risk assessment of GM crops for human nutrition and health has not been systematically performed. This lack of policy concerning the safety testing of GMOs is a powerful reason why labeling should be required. Even though no adverse effect has ever been found, this flawed system may not be able to keep some hazards from slipping through inspection, especially as crops become more and more complex in their genetic alterations. This is where it becomes an issue of individual rights and food sovereignty. People should have a choice whether or not they would like to put their trust in such a system. Biologist Shannon Berengy stresses that by not enforcing labeling of GM foods, consumers are unable to exercise food choice in accordance with their personal views. Due to this encroachment, Berengy argues that it is the government's responsibility to enforce labeling on such products. When examining the opinions of different scientists when we're considering this issue, it is really important to understand that many scientists are afraid or cautious to speak out against GMOs. Cellular biologist David William holds that many scientists in this field are afraid to speak out because of the vast power of food corporations. Additionally, these scientists who know most about the food safety of GMO crops would be out of work if GMOs were not in demand, so it is important to consider the self-preservation aspect that these engineers must feel. This is simply another bias that is important to keep in consideration.
It seems obvious to us that GMOs should be labeled. Even though it has not yet been proven to be harmful, there are still many scientists convinced that there are risks associated with them, not to mention that people are being deprived of their right to food sovereignty. Therefore, if they have the best interest of the public at heart, it should be a simple matter concluding that labeling should be regulated. So why then is it still debated to this day? Well, there are a number of political obstacles the movement must overcome before progress is possible. In
internal corruption such as this poses the biggest threat to the movement. Food corporations should have to be transparent with consumers. It is our right to know what we are eating.